Rise up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight. Welcome to Burning Daylight, the only podcast for the working cowboy. Well, welcome back, Daylight Burners. Got the second in my latest author series. We got a fella named Casey Nash. He is the author of Jubel Stone series, a Western adventure. I forget how far along I'm about halfway through the first book, I believe, and it's a fun little book. It reminds me a lot of like the old school dime store Western novels, and it fits right into the Western novel genre. So, Casey, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you on.
Thank you, Matt. It's great to be with you.
So I know very little about you. I've seen that you wrote a lot of books, and I'm a little bit through one. So tell us a little bit about Casey Nash. Who are you? Where are you from? How'd you get into this whole this writing gig?
Yeah, well, Casey Nash. I'm from South Alabama, and
Okay.
I started writing back in 2013, I think.
Okay.
And I had written for magazines before, but I'd never written a novel, and so I had this crazy idea of trying that. And but a lot of that came, Matt, from my upbringing. I was raised around livestock, trained horses, showed them, rodeo, all that kind of stuff, and so that's just sort of in my blood. But I never saw that. Culminating in a book of any sort, and especially not many books after that. And so that's where it all started for me back in 2013. And just kind of a funny little story. When I started my first book, I think it'd been kind of baking in my mind for a while. And I started putting it on paper, and I got about 90% finished before I even told my wife I was writing a book. And the reason being, I thought it was probably the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life, and thought that, people would laugh about it or whatever. And anyway, I told her I was writing it. I finished it. I let her read it. And she came back and she was crying. And I said, well, was it that bad? And she said, no, it was that good. And of course, she had some constructive criticism. And so that was the first book. And I wrote like 6 in that series. And man, from there, I don't know, it's just blossomed out. It's kind of crazy. This current Jubel Stone, U.S. Marshal, I'm on my 92nd book in that series.
Oh, wow.
And when I started, I had no thoughts of that. You know, a lot of times it seems like from the authors I know, 6, 7, 8 books in a series is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yet I started writing these, and then it just had legs, you know. And I would say these books, as you're reading it, you'll notice it's not a real long book. And I think that's one of the things a lot of my readers like. I see it on Amazon a lot. They said, I sat down and read the whole book in one reading. Mm. And they like that because some books are so thick and big, and you get lost a little bit, and you have to keep coming back to it. And so these books are more like episodes, like Gunsmoke episodes, if you would.
Yeah.
You know, you just can kind of go through it, blow through it, and you're ready for the next one.
So you're in like Louis L'Amour territory with 92 in one series, man. That's you're doing it. That's wild. That's a lot of books in 12 years.
Yeah, and the ironic thing is most of these Jubel Stones have come in the last 3 years. And I have
Jeez.
another series called Eutychus Blight Lawman, and I have 14 in that series. But the Jubel is my favorite. I do love the Eutychus Blight. It's a totally different book. And actually, Jubel Stone, he's a marshal. He actually trained Eutychus Blight to be a range detective. So, and he's in Kansas. And so that's a whole different set of circumstances. But they reconnect every now and then on manhunts and whatever they're doing. So that's pretty cool.
That's interesting. I'll have to try to catch up on some of this stuff. That's in how. So like 92 different books. How do you go about keeping the character fresh? Because it's funny. I guess for example, me and my wife were pretty big fans of that show Longmire on. It was started on AMC, I think, and then moved to Netflix. But we liked it because it was just to turn your brain off and enjoy the show. But like I got to joking with her. I was like, Longmire is the worst sheriff in the whole state of Wyoming because he has more murders than anywhere else.
Right. Yeah.
And how do you keep your thought process going? How do you go about trying to keep your character fresh and making it a new story without rehashing a ton of old stuff?
Right. Well, that's a great question. And, some writers, I've heard them talk about writer's block. I've never had that. Thank the Lord. I hope I never will. My mind is always going, and I literally write books in my sleep. I mean, I'm laying there and there's a shootout going on. I'm laying on my pillow, and I'm thinking of different characters. And so every book is a totally different story. It's not just like a rehash, like if you read one, you read them all, because I've read books like that. And it's kind of like, okay, different characters, but it's the same story. This one has a lot of twists and turns, I think, in every story. I was asked the other day on an interview about how do you know a book is going to be good when you're writing it? I said, every book I write is good. I mean, and I don't say that proudly. I say this as I mentioned them. I said, I would never turn a book into my publisher that I didn't feel really good about.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I never write a bad book, and I get going on it, and it's kind of strange. After I'm 2,000 words into a book, I feel like I kind of have it in hand. That's strange, and I write a lot different than many authors. All I need sometimes is an idea for a book, just an idea. I hear something, and I'm like, I could make a book out of that, and I do.
Yeah.
And then I'll give it a title, and I'm off and running. Sometimes I'll do an outline on one. Sometimes I don't. It is just the craziest thing, Matt. When I sit down and start writing, it just comes to me, and I love that. It's kind of a mystery in my mind, but I love it. And God just wires us all different.
Yeah.
But He's given me that, and I thank Him for it. But my mind is always going with characters, thoughts. I was also a pastor for 37 years.
Oh, okay.
A lot of my experience from being a pastor spills over into my books, like people I've known. And, as a pastor, you can imagine, I've been in the middle of a lot of stuff.
I can imagine.
Stuff, And so I'll include that in my books, and people seem to really like it. They're like, man, this is real stuff. These are about relationships, like how to keep from being crazy, or how to keep from killing somebody or whatever, So I'm just constantly thinking, I'll usually am working on 2 books, sometimes 3. If I'm writing with another author, which I'd love to talk about that a little bit, because that's been a cool experience, co-writing, collaborating.
Yeah.
In fact, Lane Morinzy that you had on your program recently, he and I are probably going to be teaming up soon to write a few books. So we're
awesome.
looking forward to that.
I really enjoyed listening to him, and I've enjoyed reading. Like I'm in the same boat with him as I am with you. I've got about halfway through one of your books, and I've enjoyed them both. And it's funny where you're more like where he's trying to make his more of like a historical fiction. Yours is like a classic, almost like a shoot 'em up type.
Right.
And I appreciate the contrast, but I that'd be on the collaboration side, that'll be pretty cool. Get a mashup of the styles, and and that'll be interesting. I'll have to have you both back on once that happens.
That'll be cool, and that's probably not too far away, according to my publicist. And so
Awesome.
looking forward to that. But as far as the ideas, it's kind of interesting, Matt. I write in my office a lot, but I'm also out and about. I go to different places, coffee houses, like just different places. And it's weird because somebody may say, well, I thought you'd need just a real private place to collect your thoughts. I'm like, man, I'm just the opposite. And I'm sitting there writing a book, and let's just say somebody comes in, there's just something different about them. You know what I mean? Like they're walking with a limp, or the way they're talking. I'm not talking about making fun of anybody, but I'm just saying that's different. And I'll write that down, and that will probably end up in a character somewhere. Just to differentiate, because otherwise, if you're not making your characters interesting, they get really boring, and people, they don't want to read a boring book,
That's funny. So my dad was he was in the Colorado House of Representatives for 8 years, and we're from the very southeast corner of Colorado, out in Dust Bowl country, and it's it's a place so flat you can watch your dog run away for 3 days. And but he spent quite a bit of time up in Denver, and he was known as the cowboy at the Capitol because he was day working cowboy for most of his life. He did some other stuff, but like that was his profession, was kind of a day hand cowboy. And when he got up there, like especially in the early, like the first couple of years of his first term, before they passed some anti-lobbying law, he would get free tickets to all the sports games, and he didn't care one way or the other about sports. Like, had no interest in the sports. But him just going to the arena and seeing people, like that was the show for him. Was like he just go people watch, and he was just he's always been an appreciator of characters, and I've kind of inherited that. So like I don't care for being in a plane all that much. Like, I'm not scared of the plane. I just don't like being jammed in cattle car style. Right. But I like the whole process of flying somewhere, because like I love sitting down at an airport bar, because like 9 times out of 10 you can strike up a conversation with a really interesting person from God knows where, just anywhere, and and you get to meet some really interesting characters like that, and yeah, I think having that kind of fascination for people in general sure helps build a character in your book.
Well, speaking of airports, it's kind of crazy, and this has changed for me since I've been writing, and I write full time now. But it used to be, I was on schedules and going places and meeting people and all that kind of stuff, and so I get kind of freaked out, when the planes would get changed and all that kind of stuff. And now, if I'm in an airport a couple of hours on a leg waiting, I'm working on my book, and man, like you said, talking about it, characters, you'll see them in the airport.
Oh yeah.
From anything, everything, every walk of life, and it's kind of cool, just just a variety of folks. And
oh yeah,
like I said, I may make a note or two, or like, man, that guy, look how he's walking or talking or whatever,
Yeah. I've had some kind of a knack to always be flying out of, we live pretty close to Reno, so that's where I fly out of. And I always seem to have a flight out of Reno at the tail end of the Burning Man festival. And you talk about some characters now.
Oh man, yeah. Well, you mentioned Colorado, and that's next to a very dear state for me, and that's Wyoming. That's sort of my second home.
Mm,
Although I don't have a second home there, I have a buddy who has a 70,000 acre ranch, and I visit each year, and I go out and work cattle with his wranglers up in the mountains. A lot of it is, and that's where I get a lot of fodder for my writing. And
yeah.
the West, for me, I don't know. I just come alive when I get out there by myself on mountaintop ranges. I mean, one day I was riding across my buddy's ranch, and he said, that over there is Powell Mountain. And I said, okay, yeah, Powell Mountain, pretty, thinking, okay. And then he said, that's where Tom Horn killed Fred Powell. And, Tom Horn was the range regulator,
Mm,
killing the rustlers that nobody could, wiping out the Wyoming ranchers at the time.
mm,
Of course, I think Steve McQueen's last movie was Tom Horn. So after my buddy showed me that mountain on his place, I'm like, I've got to go up there, So I went up the next day and just spent the whole day up there, and I wrote a book called Winchester Fever, and it was about Tom Horn. Of course, it was fiction,
yeah.
but yeah, I get a lot of ideas out there on the back of a horse or just walking around my buddy's ranch. It's amazing. I used to take a lot of pictures when I got there. I'd come back and I'm like, man, that doesn't even do it. I just stopped taking pictures. I'm like, just enjoy. And
Yeah.
I would be out there one year, and I grew up in Mississippi, and I was out there in May working cattle, and it was snowing. I'm like, this is weird now for me.
Yeah.
In May, snowing. But also there was another day, it may have been that same week, that a dark cloud came up and just hovered over us and started hailing. Well, that's the kind of stuff you see on the Westerns. I think of Lonesome Dove, and the
Oh,
storm
yeah.
they went through with the cattle. That's real stuff. I mean, you're out there and you have no cover. And
Oh,
your
yeah.
horse, you could feel your horse just shrink up under himself trying to
Oh, yeah.
getting peppered by the hailstone. And I'm wondering, is he going to start bucking? I got to think I got to stay in this saddle, But anyway, out west is so amazing to me, and it just opens the floodgates in my mind about writing.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, you had to have read a bunch before you got into writing novels. Who's some of your favorites that you would consider kind of influences?
Well, I did read some. I didn't read, ironically, I didn't read a ton of Westerns. I probably more of my influence came from the Western programs I watched.
Okay.
Bonanza, Gunsmoke,
Yeah.
The Rifleman, and a bunch of others that I still watch the reruns. They just never get old.
They're always on somewhere.
Yeah,
they're always on some.
And like you said about Longmire, those programs are very simplistic.
Yeah.
They don't require you to use your brain a whole lot. The good guy always wins.
Yeah.
And that, by the way, Matt, is funny. I have to mention this about my readers, and I appreciate them so much, and the reviews and ratings and all that kind of stuff that goes a long way. But and contrary to thought, I mean, authors do read reviews. They read the good ones and the bad ones. Sometimes you can learn more from the bad ones, But and this was ironic. Just a week or two ago, one of my latest was released, and it's part of a small series, but it was called Cattle Killers. And my publicist, he just raved about it. He said, this may be a Netflix, we may work on this. And I'm like, great, and but then it was very real and grounded in the West and the problems with their cattle they had and trying to survive on the frontier and all that kind of stuff. So the book released, and man, I'm like most authors. I watch the charts, It's like your baby, okay, it's just been birthed. My publicist, we do the same thing. We're just like looking at it. And of course, recently Amazon changed their algorithms, which drives us nuts because it used to be, most of my books were top 10 within a week. And now it's a slow rise and it just drives you crazy. But you're looking at it, and I looked, right after it'd been released, and I got a 1-star rating. And I'm like, a 1-star rating? And a rating is different, obviously, than a review. Because you don't get anything but a number from a rating. A review, they're going to say something.
Yeah.
So I'm back and forth with my publicist, and I said, man, I got a 1-star rating. And he said, it's all right. Just catch your breath,
Yeah.
whatever. Well, I mean, a week later, it was, I think Amazon, it was 4.6, and on Goodreads, it was 4.7. But it's that moment, but the readers, it's interesting because, and what I was going to say about it being humorous, when I do a 2-part or 3-part book, which I'm doing one with my daughter, by the way, now, and that's amazing. And she's quite a writer. I think she's a lot better than I am. But so we wrote the first one, and it does leave it at the end where it's going to be a next one, where Jubel Stone and her character actually hunt down the bad guy.
Yeah.
But readers sometimes are very impatient about that. They're like, I don't like cliffhangers. That's a bad author that leaves you hanging. And just several other things. Or if you let the bad guy get away, but you're coming back to it, but it's like, no, he was supposed to be caught. Good guys always win. Well, in reality, they don't.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, the bad guy's not always caught.
Oh, yeah.
But it's kind of humorous with readers is they want those certain endings,
Oh, I know. I had the same kind of thing with the podcast here. Like, people will make an image of me in their head, and that's who I am. But it's completely divorced from reality. It might be close, but like, they want me to have this opinion on something, and I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I just don't. Like, I'm sorry that that's the image you built up of me, but that's not real. Like that's not my opinion on that.
Yeah, I got you.
And so like I had one lady criticize me for not doing enough horse training stuff, and I said, well, this isn't a horse training podcast. There's plenty of those. And I was like, we'll talk horse training from time to time, but like, that's not the show that's not the place. I can point you to several others if that's what you want all the time. And then if you're only in here for the horse training ones, well, come back when you see something about horse training, and I bet you'll like it.
That's right. And you have to have a certain confidence, I think, about yourself, because if you ride the wave of what everybody thinks you should do or should be, then you're trying to be a bunch of people you're not.
Yeah.
But I do write for my readers, but I stay true to who I am. I love to write what I write, and I always say if they'll keep reading them, I'll keep writing them. But I'm not one of those, and this filters in sadly into all genres. But you got some crazy stuff out there that's trying to be introduced into the westerns. The zombie, the this, that, and the other. Maybe there's a place for that, but not in the old West where the meat and potatoes kind of western, and that's sort of what I write. And so I don't ever see changing to that degree that if a certain amount of people said, I think you need to include this or this, and that goes against my grain, I'm not going to do it,
Right. Yeah. That's like, again, it's like, yeah, maybe you think you'd like that, but I that's not me. Like
right.
That. And yeah, it's, I understand that as well. Like I've had a couple people, they'll make suggestions and like, that sounds interesting, but that'd be interesting to listen to. I don't know if I want to partake in it.
Like you said, it's good to hear suggestions because sometimes, I have to admit, I may be a little bit headstrong or thinking this way, and then somebody comes along and suggests something. And sometimes it's maybe not even what they suggest specifically, but something they said triggered something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, well, and it kind of reminds me of co-writes
Mm-hmm.
that when I first started doing those, these were like new because I've never really heard of them, and my publicist asked me if I was interested in kind of pioneering that a little bit, and man, we took off, and it's been the coolest thing, one of the coolest things in writing because I write with the best, and when you write with those kind of guys, you see how they write, it stimulates you, but you also feed off of each other, and
Mm-hmm.
your workload is in half. I mean, kind of like one of the things I was going to mention is there. I was discussing this on an interview recently. I said there's a big difference between a hobby writer and a professional writer.
Yeah.
Everybody starts, I think, as a hobby writer. Is I want something in print. I want to publish my book, and that kind of thing. Well, for some, that's the high. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been published. For me, I left that a long time ago.
Yeah.
And then it used to be, if I got in the top 100, I was just like, all right. And now it's totally different. You just keep changing your expectations because I think you're adjusting up and you're actually moving from a hobby writer to a professional. There's nothing wrong with being a hobby writer.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to write for your own enjoyment, there's totally nothing wrong with that. But if you want to write professionally, and that's what I do, I write. My writing schedule is 6 to 11 hours a day writing.
Oh, wow.
I get up early in the morning, and I don't look up till lunch, and then I'll take a break and come back to it. Now there's certain days I'm doing other things with my writing that research and that kind of thing, but it's my job. It's my
Mm-hmm.
career. I make my living now, so I don't wake up and say, I don't know if I'm gonna write today or not. I get up and write.
Yeah.
It's probably like you with sometimes with the podcast and other things you're doing is some days you may think, well, I'd really kind of rather do this, but hey, I've got a podcast to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you bow up and you do it and you work through it. But I'd say discipline is a big thing with writers. Louis L'Amour said, if you want to be a good writer, write.
Yeah.
And that is so true. And I think that's been a neat thing too. I've run into a lot of people at my book signings that would say, I've always wanted to write a book and here's my idea. I said, why haven't you? And some of them started writing. One of them, it was an experience. She wasn't writing to sell her book. She was writing to share a story, and she did it. And she sent me a copy with something in the front that said something like, "You're the one that helped me get to this point, or you're the one that encouraged me to put this in writing." The power of our words.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing. I'm kind of going all over the place, but that's another thing in my writing that the power of words stands out to me because I can be writing a scene and it'll make me laugh my head off.
Yeah.
I just sit back and I start laughing. And there's other times there are some very sad experiences in these books. And I'm a mess.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like broken down over it because I think it triggers a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
In your life, if you've lost people in your life, everybody has, but anytime somebody loses somebody, it brings you back to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's times I'm laughing, there's times I'm crying, and I thought, man, if somebody walked in, they would probably scoop me up with a butterfly net and take me off to the loony bin. But here I am, I'm thinking, I'm writing these words and they're moving my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And then to think that it can move readers' emotions because people tell me that. They say, the Jubel Stone series, they're my family now. That's what one person said, they're my family. And I'm like, that is so cool. You're like journeying along with them,
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I've had people reach out about certain episodes that I've done, and they'll talk about how they re-listen to it because like one of them was and it was kind of I won't say a throwaway episode, but it was an easy one for me because I was sitting down with a guy and talking ranch broncs. It was just he's a big time ranch bronc guy, and he's on the board of the Western States Ranch Rodeo Association, and we were just kind of talking, like it was right before the rodeo season really kicked off, and yeah, I had a guy reach out the other day, and he's like, when are you gonna do some more of those? He's like, I love that episode. I re-listen to it all the time, and I'm like,
That's cool. That's
I'm
cool.
like, well, that I had no expectations from that episode, because it was just sitting down with a buddy and talking Bronx, and but like, interesting how certain ones will get certain people.
Well, it's kind of the equivalent of scratching somebody where they're itching, you know, and you don't have any idea, but they're listening, and it triggers something in them. That's pretty cool, and that's what books do. People get different things from them, but I loved it. I'd love to see those reviews where, you know, one of them was like Jubel's son, and he's a family man, you know, and so he's kind of balanced. Somebody asked me, well, were you thinking about a certain person when you wrote? I said, I was thinking about a lot of people, putting Jubel together, building him, you know, like a Matt Dillon, you know, just all the different characters that we look up to in the Westerns, their grit, their sadness, their, you know, but also he's got a family side to him. His family means the world to him. So he balances all this hardcore frontier lawman stuff with, I have a wife, I have a family, I'm crazy about them, you know, that kind of thing. So I think it makes him real and believable, you know, but, and there's times he's in vulnerable positions. He, you know, as much as the readers don't like it, sometimes Jubel is in a vulnerable spot.
Yeah.
And he has to rely on others. You know, he's not a Superman.
Which is real. Like there's
yeah.
Like there's always been, like, anybody who's cowboyed for very long, there's always that one guy that's always in the right spot, always doing, like, he's the top hand. But eventually top hands get old, and you get to a point where now they need a little help where they used to not need it. And
well, the thing about it too, if you take that top hand, he didn't get there just by himself.
Right.
He had other top hands he was looking at. And it's kind of like authors, for instance, even with co-writes, you may have some authors who say, no, I write my own stuff. I don't want to write with somebody else or whatever. I don't want, you know, whatever. It's kind of like I stand on my own. And you know, if you pull the curtain back a little bit, like we were talking a while ago, you asked me kind of like, who are the influencers in your life as far as Westerns? The Louis L'Amours, you know, the Zane Greys, the Elmer Leonard, you know, a lot of movies. And even other writers that you've followed and you've read their stuff. Well, what they've done is mentored you. You know, they walked alongside you. And so you didn't get to where you are by yourself. Sometimes we may act like it, like I'm my own man. Well, we need to be our own men, but we also need to understand the importance of others in our lives and us pouring into them, because like you said, that old top hand, he's not going to be top hand forever. And if he doesn't pour into some younger guys, it's going to take them a lot longer to get to where he is. It's sort of like a older pastor told me one time. I was telling him, I said, man, I want to pick your brain. You know, he said, yeah. He said, let's make some different mistakes. Let's don't make the same ones. I thought that was pretty good, you know. You can learn from others, you know.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's it's funny is there's that old saying. It's like everybody wants to be a cowboy until it's time to do cowboy shit, and then and I feel that same way about the mountain man. You hear everybody talk about, I'd love to just go out and just lose myself in the wilderness. Like, well, even when that was a real possibility and a pretty easy one to achieve, there was very few that actually took that opportunity. It's kind of a it's a mirage for the most part, because the mountain men, they were doing a job. Like they were by themselves, 363 days out of the year, but they still hit that rendezvous to trade and everything, to reap some sort of benefit for their efforts on the year.
Well, I think a lot of that is nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like one of my favorite places, like I said, is Wyoming. We go to Tennessee a lot, the mountain. I love the mountains.
Yeah.
But if I lived there, they would probably lose their appeal to me at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even see that mountain range anymore. You just kind of bury your nose in your work, and so there's that of if you're really living in the middle of that, and like you said, the mountain men, they were in survival mode. They weren't out chasing a movie script or
No.
like, oh, there's going to be a movie made about me. They're like, I'm just trying to make it through tomorrow with my hair on my head,
Yeah. And
or
if
find something to eat.
yeah, you're either trying not to starve or not to get scalped, or both.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of nostalgia, but it's yeah, but I guess going back to your thoughts on the writing, I mean, same way. Like everybody wants to have a book out there, but very few actually write the book. I've heard a
That's
lot.
exactly right. Yeah.
Some of the criticism on podcasts. Everybody's got a podcast nowadays. Yeah, there's a lot for sure, and I could do better than that. Okay, well, go do it. That more power to you.
Yeah, that's the same way with books. Sometimes is your pride or your flesh gets into it. Like when you get a real zinger
Yeah.
review, and maybe they don't even put their name on it, that kind of thing. And you're like, part of you want to say, what's the name of your book or books? I'd like to take a look. But then I'm like, no, I don't need to go down that road, and I don't. I do appreciate any kind of reviews. Positive ones are more appreciated, but I do learn from negative ones as well. So
Yeah, more often than not, I don't get a whole lot of negative feedback on my stuff. The people that listen to me like what I do, and any criticism tends to be pretty constructive. But more often than not, like if somebody's got an issue, be like, well, hey, come on, we'll talk about it. And if they're serious about it, they will. And if they're really just bitching, they'll be like, I don't got time.
Well, going back to that idea of writing, like a lot of people I've talked to, I've always wanted to write a book. And so, all right, you've got the desire, but then you've got to walk that out. And, the sad part about it, it's like a lot of things in life. And I'm one of those, I've kind of got pit bull in me, when I lock onto something, if I'm building my barn, if I'm working on something, I'm going to finish it. It may kill me, but I'm going to stay with it until I finish it. Same way with my books is like, I just stay with it. It's not always rainbows and butterflies. You push through it. But I hear people say, yeah, I've had this book idea. I've written some of it. I started 20 years ago. I'm like, 20 years ago? Oh, my goodness. I mean, I want to encourage them, but it's likely 20 years from now they're going to be saying the same thing.
Yeah.
If they don't put a stake in the ground and say, I'm going to get it done. But again, writers are motivated in different ways. And for me, I love to write, and I love to write in this genre, but I also want to sell my books.
Yeah.
I want my labor to pay off.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just, I mean, I'm thrilled that people, and I really say this from my heart, I'm humbled and I'm thrilled that people will pay to read something I wrote. And I hope I never get over that. I really say that, like, that amazes me. But I want to bring the best product. I want them to continue to read. Like, that's the cool thing about your readership. Same way with your followers on podcast is they're going to be down with whatever you're doing in a sense. They're like armed and ready. Like, when's the next one? What are you going to be talking about? Same way with books is I do really well with my pre-orders. My publicist told me that this was a book in the Eutychus Bly series, and it had been on pre-order for a while. And he said, you have 4,500 pre-orders. And I said, what? And I was thinking, did he say 450 or 4,500? And he said 4,500. Well, that means people have bought the book. It's not complete. And, you've got enough. I mean, they're diehards in a sense. They're like, I support you as an author. I'm ready for your next book. I've already got it on my Kindle. And, of course, it loads up the day it goes live. I think that's the coolest thing. That has just blown me away, to think about even pre-orders. And that doesn't work for everybody, but it's worked really well for me. So I may have up to 3 pre-orders up, and I'm working on all those.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's the way. Yeah, you're doing something right when you got that many people just buying into it because that guy, it's going to be good. I like this guy, so that's a
And
good
you don't
feeling.
want to let them down. That's another reason you bring your best for yourself, but also for them is because, as you mentioned earlier, to begin with, how do you keep it fresh? You've got to keep it fresh, or people will read it and say that's the same story, different characters.
Yeah.
So I really try to work on character development, always looking for those new characters. And recently, someone asked me, "Is there going to be any new characters injected into the Jubel Stone?" And I said, "Well, every book is going to be new characters. The antagonist is going to change and all that. But sometimes there will be a character I'll include in a new book, and I just know pretty quick this is kind of a special person here. They're going to reappear. I may do the return of so and so. I've done several of those because readers ask for that. They say, like a man called Sligo, I think it was, and he was an Irishman. He was a really cool character. And after that book, people say, "Is there going to be another Sligo?" Well, at that moment there wasn't, but probably 6 or 8 books later there was. And I love that, to be able to go back and connect those stories that I've written with the new story, because your readers, and they'll tell you if you're trying to, and that's another thing I'd say, Matt, about my books, 91 of them, I think, and if somebody said, "Well, do you have to read them in order?" I would say read the first 2 because it gives the background of Jubel when he was young and growing up, lost his family, they were gunned down, and then his rise to being a lawman early, 16 years old. He just he had amazing skills, but he got that from his dad, But readers would need to read the first 2 books, book 1 and book 2. After that, the books are pretty much standalone.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat. Well, and that makes it kind of handy. So, like, one of my favorite authors growing up was Clive Cussler. He wrote the Dirk Pitt series, and kind of an action spy thriller type. But what I really liked about his writing style was he would reconnect, like you said, with certain characters, and that way it's almost like a cheat code. Like, you can go back and you can it's like you got a power up here. I'm going back to this character, and right, I know I can write something really cool with those 2 together, because they always get into some wild hijinks, and but it keeps it fresh while using rehashed characters. And
well, I think there's a continuity to it too. Is like every story is not just totally different, or it doesn't have any connection to the past. A lot of it does, and that's what I was going to say a while ago. Is that I've had people say something like, can't remember exactly, but it's sort of like, "Hey, I already know that. I don't have to be." But you have to think about other readers. Is if you don't add some type of introductory or something about a little more about the character, they're like, "Well, I don't know that person," So you kind of have to balance it off. Don't go too much back into the past, but sometimes those stories require that you rehash the context of it, and bring it forward. And I've done that. In fact, this book I'm working on now, it's called Miller's Revenge, and it goes back several books where Jubel and some other lawmen, killed some family members, and this guy rises up, and now he's riding vengeance. And and so you kind of have to know a little bit about what happened back there,
Mm-hmm.
to understand why is this guy so mad? Why does he want to kill Jubel Stone?
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting. That, yeah, that's it's fascinating with so like a lot of the good writers and for as excellent of a writer that Larry McMurtry was, he wrote Lonesome Dove to be kind of a standalone.
Right.
And then he got the prequels and the sequels later on, but you could tell he didn't set out to write that as a
Right.
series,
Exactly.
because there's a lot of stuff that doesn't quite add up when
Yeah.
you
Well, you get different directors involved. They're going to change something for the screen, and that's my concern. I've had several times talking about some of my books being, either Netflix, PureFlix, whatever, and that's one of my concerns. I want my brand to stay pure.
yeah
I don't want to take my book and trash it up and say, "Oh, you got to do this so people will want to look at it." Frankly, a lot of the contemporary westerns today are trash. I
yeah
mean, there's just no storyline to them. It's just blow somebody's head off, guts going down the wall, and that kind of stuff. And I'm not into that. I don't think a lot of people are. You can just get too much into it. And that's another thing with my books is families can read my books. There's not profanity in them. I'm kind of like Louis L'Amour. He said, those that use profanity in their books, it's because of a lack of vocabulary.
my mom used to always say that too.
It can be. So I don't see a need in it. I don't think it sells books. I think it turns people off. In fact, I've seen some other reviews where people would say about other authors, I don't like God's name taken in vain. I don't like the sexual scenes, and so my books are clean, but they're real. Now they're violent. They're violent because
Yeah.
that was the frontier. But I've just seen no need to trash them up, and I never will do. First of all, my commitment to God. When I started writing, I know He gave me that ability, and I'm not going to do anything to shame Him. But I'm not going to shame my own name either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Makes sense. And that's a good, I think a guy ought to have a line in the sand somewhere.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
goes different, varying levels. But you have to set a line somewhere, and like this is me, and outside of this, I don't go. And that
Right.
I think that's admirable.
Yeah. Also, you're talking about Larry McMurtry on the Lonesome Dove, and I would say, in his defense, which you weren't running down, you're just saying probably when he wrote Lonesome Dove, he wasn't thinking of a prequel or sequel.
Right.
And I would say when I started Jubel Stone, if you'd have told me I'd be 91 books into it, I said, you're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But some books, and you'll find very few, this is what my publicist has told me as well, you'll find very few series that have that many books in them.
Oh, yeah.
There's another guy that I write with. He has more than I do. I'm trying to catch him, but he and I write. He's 90 years old.
Oh, okay.
And he's amazing though. I mean, he puts them out, and his character's a Marshal, and we hook our guys together. We've probably written 8 or 10 books together.
Nice.
And so I'd say, like when I'm writing, like if somebody asked me, well, what's the next great adventure for Jubel? How many books will be in this series? I don't know, but I think it still has legs.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just keep going until, and I guess my barometer would be, hey, if my book's just bottomed out, nobody's buying Jubels anymore, I would probably stop and say, I may need to change, may need to start a new series.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's wild. And I wasn't trying to run down McMurtry by any means.
No. That's what I'm saying.
I think Lonesome Dove is the quintessential Western
absolutely.
novel. I mean, I think it's a masterpiece.
That's my favorite. Yeah.
Oh, and that's not to say that Comanche Moon and Streets of Laredo are bad novels
Right.
either. As a series, I give it like a C minus because it's just
Yeah.
it feels kind of thrown together when it should have probably just been Lonesome Dove.
Well, I would also say about books, this is another misnomer with authors, and same way with across the artist scale, I guess. But, for instance, like a song comes out and it goes to number one, whether it's country song or whatever. Let's just say a George Strait. Well, it's not going to stay on the charts forever.
No.
That's why he has 60, I think, number one hits. He kept writing them or kept singing them. Everything has a shelf life.
Yep.
And so my best book, even if even if a series went through Netflix, well, it has a shelf life.
Mm.
And after a few months, it's going to wane and people are looking for something new.
Oh, yeah. Always are.
And so with authors out there, I would say any who are thinking about, like, maybe think, if I could just write that one big book. Well, you can write the one big book, and that would be great, but it has a shelf life.
Yeah.
It won't last forever. It won't sell forever. It won't be talked about forever.
Right.
People move on. And so that's why even with my publisher and my publicist kind of have a formula.
Mm.
And part of that formula is you write, and write some more.
Yeah.
And you keep a series going as long as it has legs, and then you may start another one. I think sometimes some writers make a mistake and they may jump from a series too quick.
Mm.
It may just be catching fire.
Yeah.
Because there's a kind of a catch up, like your reader base is going to read it. But if it's a really good book and people are chiming on it and jazzed about it, then you're going to pull new readers in. And as that train of new readers comes, it feeds your charts, and then it becomes a bestseller or whatever. But if you're impatient, you may jump to another series when that one was just getting hot.
Yeah. Yeah, you always got to play the hot hand. That's
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, here's something I would share also, Matt, that was interesting. This was in a Zoom call that me and some other authors had with our publisher. And I don't think this is secret information by any means, but it was an eye-opener for me. And I want to ask you this question, not putting you on the spot, but
okay.
You're a podcaster, so, man, hey. But if you were to put a percentage on how many, as far as Western readers, what percentage of men versus percentage of women would you guess?
What if I'm going to judge off of my podcast audience, and I'll say 70% men, 30% women.
Did you know that the studies that my publisher has done and the information, the data, 55% of Western readers are women?
Really?
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
And then 98% of authors' sales are from Kindle. 98%. So only 2% are from paperback or printed.
Yeah.
And now, and also my books are, another platform would be the audio that we're about to hopefully do the whole series, because there's two sets of listeners on that in regard to audio. One is older people who have eye trouble.
Yeah.
A lot of my book signings, I've had a number of older ones say, I can't read anymore, but I sure would love to listen to it. And then the second is even the younger people who, that's why they read a book, they listen to it now.
That's how I am anymore. I'm always on the go, and I'm always
multitasking.
If there's a book that I need to check out, I check it on Audible or another audiobook platform first.
Right.
Because then I can listen to it as I'm working. I have the great luxury of working horseback most days and by myself. So
I'm jealous.
It's pretty nice. I'm not gonna lie. So, but I work by myself most of the time, so I can put my headphones on and just go about my day and do my job and still listen to a good book in the background or podcast. So
Well, that's what I love about going to Wyoming, and I'll ride any opportunity I have and help them with the cattle up there. And of course, some of that terrain is pretty rough. I mean, Mississippi, Alabama, all that flat land mostly, and where we rode was always flat. But I remember one day I was riding. I had about 30 head of cattle in front of me, some red Angus, real pretty cattle. I was just enjoying the landscape, and we were all kind of collecting cattle. And there was this mountain on my right side that was kind of the border, and I got to just kind of looking, and I spotted a little, splotch of brown hair, and I kept looking, and I looked some more, and I'm like, that's a cow up there. And I kept looking, and then I saw another one. There were like 3 of them. And it's still like straight up. I'm like, I'm not going up there. And so the foreman came trotting by me, and I said, Lawrence, look up there, there's some cattle. And he said, gummit. And he started zigzagging up. It took him probably 20 minutes, but then I looked up and he was bringing them down. But, I'm addicted to horses. I grew up around them. I love the smell of them. I love to be on the back of them. I don't get to ride enough. I have horses, but down here, man, it's so hot,
Oh, yeah.
But I ride anyway, some. But anyway, that's cool that you're on the back of a horse. I've written a number of my books or parts of them on the back of a horse.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I started when I started my podcast. I recorded it while I was riding pins at the feedlot. I was just I had a set of headphones, and I just recorded it all on my phone, and that was about 6 years ago. And then I've got a better setup now. It's people like those old episodes, but they're not worth the effort to me because it's impossible to get good audio on it.
Right.
Even with a good microphone, there's just too much background noise, and it's once you try to pull back the background noise just enough to make it like then it sounds like I'm talking into a tin can, and
right.
It wasn't worth the effort for me. So it's much easier just to do it in a controlled environment.
I think it kind of reminds me. I've preached at a number of cowboy churches and speak at rodeos and that kind of stuff, and love to do that, do book signings and that kind of thing. But I think, even the cowboy life, the draw, in my opinion, one of them is it's a simple life.
Yeah.
You go out and you have a job, you go out and you get it done, and you're through, and you come home saying, whether it was rounding up some sick cows and treating them or branding them or whatever, I got the job done.
Yeah.
There is so much in life and people's jobs today that there is no start and finish. And that's what drives people crazy.
Yeah.
And there's no signpost to say, all right, you're here, or great job, or you've done this. And frankly, I would say even when I was a pastor, the frustration sometimes was I didn't ever feel like my job was done. And, you didn't have a signpost to say, okay, you're here.
Yeah.
It just continued. Now, writing, for me, I set out, start a book, I finish it, I edit it, I send it to my publisher to edit, then it, hits Amazon, and it's done. And you feel accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
So, like when you're on the back of a horse, you know what your job is that day.
Yep.
You go after it, you get it done, you come home feeling satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of people that don't have that. And maybe that's what the Westerns do for them. There's a start,
maybe.
There's a start and finish, and also good usually prevails. Not always, but usually.
Mm-hmm.
And people need to see that today because things are crazy.
Yeah, it is a crazy time that we live in. There's no doubt about that. I've said that for the last like 5 or 6 years, and I keep thinking it can't get too much crazier. The authors aren't going to have anything to write about. It'll just be nonfiction. But it just keeps. But the world just keeps on getting weirder, and you're like, well, I guess this is where we live nowadays. But
this is where we are.
Well, Casey, this has been a really fun conversation. I sure enjoyed having you on. I look forward to finishing. I'll take your advice and read the first 2 of Jubel Stone and then jump in randomly somewhere.
Awesome.
And when you and Lane get your collaboration done, if should that happen, I'll have you both on at the same time talk about it.
That sounds great. I appreciate you having me, Matt. I've enjoyed it.
Of course. Any last plugs before we go? Where do they find you, your work?
All my books are on Amazon. Casey Nash. You can just pull that up, and they ought to all load up. And would love for people to give it a try. Give Jubel Stone a read, and also the Eutychus Bly series. As I mentioned earlier, I'm very open to speaking at different events. Love to do that. Love to travel. And just stay tuned to Casey Nash. Lot more books coming.
All right, sounds good. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Make sure you go check out his work. Look him up on Amazon. And thanks for tuning in. Now move your ass. We're burning daylight.
Up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Burning daylight. Well, life is just a gather, and you won't catch 'em all. But when you ride through the gate, make sure you sit up tall. I can see the horizon, it's looking pretty bright. Well, get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.